Okay, before anyone even says or thinks anything, this area, yes, that is my blanket over all of my crap. But we're gonna move on from that. Hello. What's up? This is gonna be a little different from what I usually do because, you know, this is also like a homework assignment. But, you know, I figure I might as well post it too because, you know, content. Because this is for my English class, today I will be analyzing the themes of two books. Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe and Lord of the Flies by William Golding. In both of these books, and in real life, there is a lot to be said about gender constructs. Because this is for English and, you know, you need a good thesis or whatever. Every system has constructs for people based solely on their gender, and that expectation can be destructive to those feeling pressured to live up to it. First, we're going to focus on the book Things Fall Apart, and in that book, the whole basis of their society consists of two things: gender and religion. Men of Umuofia lead the tribe, and they get more power based on like the size of their yam farms and how many children they are able to have. And they want to have as many wives as they possibly can because that means that they're able to support those wives, which makes them more powerful. The yams are a major symbol of like masculinity and power because they are very large and heavy things to harvest? I don't know. Basically, manly. The main character, Okonkwo, has a very high social status, but with that also comes a lot of toxic masculinity and his inability to change. He's a very violent man who beats his wives and is verbally abusive and physically abusive, really, to anyone that doesn't fit into the constructs in the tribe, especially to the men. If they are not the perfect picture of what he thinks a man should be, he's terrible to them. I should have my books. I'll just keep reading it off of here. And then he also has a son, Nawoye, who isn't the perfect son that he wants to have, so he's very verbally abusive to him. And on page 14, it says, quote, "At any rate, that is how it looked to his father, and he sought to correct him by constantly nagging and beating him. And so Nawoye was developing into a sad-faced youth." He hated his father, which is why he vouched to be absolutely nothing like him. So Okonkwo lived his life focused on success and strength and showing no emotion that could be seen as womanish. He started his journey to success by participating in a wrestling match, and this annual event was looked forward to by the whole tribe every year. That's what annually means. Why? You get the point. Anyway, wrestling match shows a major aspect of the male constructs because the winner is celebrated for proving his manliness solely through strength. And even though it happened years before Okonkwo even got married to his first wife, him beating the former champion of the wrestling match instantly made him more influential in society. Him being proven as the strongest man in Umuofia made him a force to be reckoned with and praised. So basically, Okonkwo has 3 wives, and one of them saw him at the wrestling match, and then she was like, "Woo!" And I was supposed to have a direct quote to show how she explained it, but I couldn't find it. I looked. I swear it disappeared, like the ink just left. Basically, she was remembering when she first saw Okonkwo wrestling, and she was swooned, and was determined to marry him after that. My Chromebook just signed me out. Women made all of their life decisions based on the men that they wanted to marry or that they were married to. His role in that society was to cook and clean and be the lesser part of a partnership. Once they reached a certain age, they were even sold to a man. Young girls of the tribe were groomed to be beautiful and dutiful and quiet so their family could get a good bride price for her. In every way, the man has control. So basically a sum up of constructs in Things Fall Apart. Men have all the power, they shouldn't show emotion, toxic masculinity, all that stuff. And the women are expected to act in this very traditional way that women are seen to cook and clean and just be useful for their husband. My cat's here. Say hi to Cozy. Moving on to Lord of the Flies, which was the second book that I'm going to be analyzing the theme of. The whole book is an allegory. The island that the boys get stranded on represents society, and the biggins, or the older boys, are symbols for different systems of power. Little ones, or the younger kids, are then left to be the citizens of that society. The constructs in this book are quite different from those in Things Fall Apart, but they are still just as destructive to everyone involved. Rather than it being about brute strength, it is about the internal superiority that the boys are expected to uphold. These children are expected to act as the image of the British. They are supposed to know exactly what to do and do it with ease. No, that's not what I want to say. That internalized feeling that they have should translate into what they do, obviously doing it with ease, and then it also needs to translate into how they look, their physical appearance. Refined, superior. At the very start of the book, when they are first immersed into the island, we meet all the characters, one of which is Jack. On page 42, he says, quote, "After all, we're not savages, we're English, and the English are best at everything." This same boy perpetually bullies another character who is referred to as Piggy throughout the whole story. Piggy doesn't fit into the gender constructs that the rest do. A more overweight boy with curiosity and ideas that the others just don't want to hear. So he's outcasted at the very start of the book, and he stays that way until he gets killed by a boulder at the end of the book. These little boys were decidedly British by William Golding because of the reputation that the British have. They have almost always been the most, powerful culture, I guess you could say. So Ralph, a biggin in the book, is the picture of what the British should be, at least according to the constructs that were in place at that time. So this character, Ralph, was chosen democratically to be the leader of these boys, and this was because he looked like he should lead. On page 23, referencing back to that, it says, quote, "None of the boys could have found a good reason for this. What intelligence had been shown was traceable to Piggy, while the most obvious leader was Jack. But there was a stillness about Ralph as he sat that marked him out. There was his size and attractive appearance." Basically, he looked the part, and appearance is everything to the British because it exudes power. This could go as far as to reference the adults mentioned in the book, because they're all on this island, but they're always referencing back to what would the British do, what would they want us to do. We wish we had adults here to guide us and tell us what to do so that this doesn't just go to words I will not say. One adult that they reference all the time is Ralph's dad, because he is a pilot, so they expect him to miraculously find them after they've crashed on this island. But anything derived from the lessons of Piggy's auntie was dismissed. Now, both authors, Chinua Achebe and William Golding, both use the British as a comparison for the other society, culture, what have you, that influences how the primary culture behaves. In Lord of the Flies, the boys are influenced by the memories of how they used to live. They have a big bonfire as a smoke signal in the hopes of getting rescued, and when they get closer to it, they are more aware of how they are behaving. Because they really are just children, they have a deep-rooted desire to have the approval of the adult figures in their lives, or at least that were in their lives before they wound up on this island. They feel obligated to act as good British boys. At the same time, an aspect of the book is that these expectations are put in place for the purpose of structure. By the end of the book, the boys have fully reached their savage state. No one get heated, it's just the reference that they use in the book, okay? Moving on. Which is then starkly compared to a British man in uniform who comes to rescue them, who just happens to be an officer for the war that the rest of the outside world was in. Being confronted by an adult figure of how they are supposed to be, they suddenly became smaller or more shrunken in on themselves. All of the things that they had done on the island didn't matter to the man because he was their superior and he was rescuing them. So anything that they had did, he saw as smaller or less significant because he was a good British man rescuing them from their own self-destruction. On the very last page of the book, it says, quote, "The officer, surrounded by these noises, was moved and a little embarrassed. He turned away to give them time to pull themselves together and waited, allowing his eyes to rest on the trim cruiser in the distance." And then the whole point of this was to show the irony of the constructs that are put in place by the British, both on the island and outside of it, because it was very violent, yet they are being rescued by a member of the British Army, going to show that the facade of the British was false, and that they had all the same tendencies as the rest of the world, going to show that there is no such thing as a good British man, or that there is no such thing as a good British woman, because we are all just the same. The constructs put in place by the British were hypocritical, claiming to be a level-headed and poised, and then participating in war. Moving on then to the connection to Things Fall Apart and this opposing British society. About halfway through, literally in part 2 of the book, British men show up to convert the Africans to Christianity and follow their power structure. It takes a while, but they eventually convert the majority of the tribe to Christianity. The few that refused, the British became violent and oppressive towards. They were once preaching to them that there is only one God who loves all people and does not believe in unjustness. They had their own structure that worked for them. They had all the complexities that a society has, but because they were in Africa, they were still primitive and they needed their help. The whole book was written so that there was an accurate representation of societies in Africa. So Chinua Achebe wanted to show that there are complexities in the way that they live and that they have expectations for everyone just like any other society in the whole world. But at the end of the book, a white man or one of the missionaries says that even though he's seen how they lived, they are still primitive. And the whole point that he went there was to convert them to Christianity, but also to write a book about his times in the Lower Niger. On page 209, there is a quote written not from the perspective of, but about the missionary. And it says, quote, "He had already chosen the title of the book after much thought. The pacification of the primitive tribes of the Lower Niger." This perspective goes to show how different cultures have a different version of toxic masculinity. While this quote may seem more power-related, it is definitely influenced by the nature of a British man. Even though he had seen the complexity of the tribes, he still chose to follow what he feels was expected of him. He was expected to enter their lives and report back what the British already thought that they knew or that they wanted to hear. So having the power of a successful book with nothing to contradict the perspectives of the British empowered the missionary, making him feel like a good British man. I wanted this to be funnier and like more lighthearted, because address the stuff, but make this enjoyable. This got way deeper than I actually intended it to. I was maybe add a meme. Ready, 3, 2, 1. There you go. It's a little more lighthearted. Basically, to sum up, every society and any system of power has constructs for men and women. Usually they are different expectations, meaning always they have different expectations of men and women, and these things can be very consequential to everyone involved. The expectations of men can hurt all other men, and they can be more damaging to the women involved in their lives or in their communities and all of these things, but also the expectations of women can make them feel lesser and less important and just less everything. Constructs need to be addressed and then switched. Men and women can be expected to do the same things. They can get the same amount of education. They can have the same amount of power in a society. And the whole point of these books was to address these gender constructs and basically everything that's wrong with them. Just do a little, maybe turn the tables a little bit, mix it up a bit, men and women can be the same. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope you learned something. That being said, these earrings are heavy and I think I'm gonna go. Adios. Okay. Bye.